And we are live. Sorry about that. Apparently, my computer decided it wasn't going to load the page on my browser, so I had to open up the chat on my phone. And here I am. So I'm just going to be going over the Syria debacle today. I got a few articles to read and going to discuss it more or less. Despite the fact that I completely disagree with the concept of going to war in the Middle East, I figure it's a good idea to keep an eye on the situation as a whole, of course, because we got the allegations against Assad, and of course you have the Russians, Putin backing Assad, and us sticking our big nose in it because we believe that we're the police of the world. And of course, UK and the France, as far as I am aware, joined hand in hand with their big brother, the US, and this is just a huge fucking powder keg waiting to fucking cause World War III. Except that instead of this time with it being fought in trenches or with tanks and gunships, it's going to be fought probably with nukes. So that's always fun. I just absolutely love the idea of getting blown to fucking the Stone Age with nuclear weapons. You fucking guys. Anyway, let's get the show on the road, shall we? Start off with something a little bit of a start of the story, so to speak. So, to those who aren't aware, they sent in investigators into Syria to investigate the chemical attack to try to ascertain who, actually did it. You got some people that are saying it was Assad. You got some other people saying that it was a false flag to get us involved, which, quite frankly, I wouldn't doubt either of those two things. But regardless of the situation, it's still not our fucking place to try and even attempt to stabilize that fucking region. Because if we do, it's just going to turn out just like every other Middle Eastern country we attempt to destabilize. We leave, turns right to shit as soon as we're gone. Hell, in some cases, it turned to shit while we were there. But that's besides the point. So, there's that. Shut up, phone. Why is it buzzing at me? Assad didn't do nothing. I mean, there's really no way to tell 100%, but I guess we'll have to wait for the report to come out. But anyway, this is from the Wall Street Journal, and this is as of 5 hours ago. So as of 5 hours ago, this is the headline in here. Inspectors enter Syrian town of Douma to investigate and suspect a chemical attack. Now keep in mind, we've already bombed. We've already sent missile strikes over to Assad. So we're basically, we're not applying our own logic of, innocent until proven guilty. We're just, yeah, they definitely did it. And of course, you have some people saying, "Oh, this is just Trump playing 3D chess," or 4D chess, whatever the fuck I call it. Me personally, it's a dumb decision regardless. Nothing like fucking poking the bear. An international team of inspectors on Saturday entered the Syrian town of Douma to investigate a suspected chemical weapons attack that killed dozens of people 2 weeks ago and resulted in a retaliatory U.S.-led missile strike. Yes, so like I said before, we already bombed them. Now, if it was just the U.S. or if there was other nations involved, I'm not 100% sure. So, let's see here. Gravemind said, Assad, I'll use gas just as I'm about to win so that the U.S. will stay and jeopardize my goals. So that sounds like something logical somebody would do. So, of course, this is happening. Like I said, this is April 21st. This is today. This was articles from 5 hours ago. It might be 6 hours at this point, but regardless, we still have no idea who the fuck did it, and we're gonna poke the bear. Yeah, it's fucking brilliant. The fact-finding mission for the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons had trouble securing permission from the Syrian government and Russian military forces to enter the area. UN reconnaissance team that entered Douma earlier this week turned back because of gunfire. But on Saturday, the chemical weapons inspectors were able to collect samples and were assessing the possibility of a return trip, the group said. So, UN reconnaissance team already entered and they turned back because of gunfire. Now, one could extrapolate that it was either Russia or Assad. It could even be the rebels that were behind the gunfire. You don't know. These people will just assume one or the other, depending on what their bias is, whether they believe Assad is innocent or if they believe it's a false flag. Once again, this goes back to what I talk about biases, but opinions hurt. I don't believe shit reported by anyone. I can hear you on that one. U.S. officials have said they suspect chlorine and possibly nerve agent were used on the formerly held rebel-held area. Killing at least 43 and injuring dozens in the April 7th attack. Photographs showed victims foaming at the mouth. In response, the U.S., France, and the U.K. launched a barrage of missiles last week at what officials said were Syria's chemical weapons facilities. So the officials say it was the chemical weapons facilities. I can't guarantee that. I haven't seen any of the reports, but that's besides the point. U.S., France, and the U.K. launched a barrage of missiles. So I'm assuming this was a joint effort between all three states. So it wasn't just the U.S. But regardless, like I said before, why the fuck would we want to poke the bear? Let's see here now. The U.S. ambassador to the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons has accused Russia of seeking to delay the arrival of inspectors. Yes, accused being the operative word. Russian officials said they were only seeking proper UN approval given the dangerous situation. Western officials have expressed concern that those trying to conceal this accepted chemical weapons attack might have tampered with the evidence. Yes, they might have, or they might not have. This is all conjecture. This is not proven. You're assuming, not saying that they didn't. I'm saying that you're making an accusation based off of little to no evidence. I mean, they have gathered samples, as it said earlier in the article. So if they've already gathered sample, why not, instead of making accusations, why not wait for the evidence to come out before you go throwing missiles at people? I'm sorry, that would make too much sense. Syria has denied chemical weapons were used in an attack. Its ally Russia at first agreed with that assessment. More recently, has said the attack did take place, casting blame on Syrian rebels or agents of a foreign power hostile to Russia. You know, this is something that needs, this paragraph right here, something that needs to be like taken into account. For people, it might not even have been people within Syria. It might not even have been the Syrian government. It could have been somebody from. It could have been an outside organization or group or country that simply wants Russia to be, for Russia and the U.S. to have an unsteady relationship. Who could that be? I couldn't tell you one way or the other. But that's the point. That's why you wait for the fucking evidence to come out. You don't assume things, especially in the sense of this situation, because you have Russia and America, the two leading powers in the world right now. Us not getting along is not a good thing. The samples collected Saturday are going to be sent to the Weapons Monitors Laboratory in the Netherlands and then elsewhere for analysis. So this happened over the weekend. Last weekend. So it's been a week and nothing yet. The group typically does not identify the labs where it sends samples and materials for analysis. Or that could have actually been today. But I'm guessing it was last week. Before carrying out their strike on Syria, the U.S., France, and the U.K. said the Syrian government responsible for the chemical weapons attack, which was meant to break the rebel grip on Duma, the Syrian government and Russian forces are now in control of the area. Well, yeah, I mean, why wouldn't they be? Which, one could say, well, that's the reason why they did the attack in the first place. Yeah, I guess you could say that. But like I said, you can only conjecture. You can't make this about. You can't just assume this off of, the motives fit the crime. Yeah, but you can also say, in the sense of the rebels, they did it to themselves to get the U.S. involved because they're losing to the Syrian regime. You could make a lot of assumptions based off of just the attack. That's besides the point. Stock account. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons set up a fact-finding mission in 2014 to investigate allegations of chemical weapons use in Syria. As part of an agreement to avert a strike on the regime in 2013, the Syrian government had agreed to give up its stockpiles, sign the Chemical Weapons Convention, and allow inspectors. Despite the 2013 deal, chemical attacks targeting civilians have continued, including the use of weaponized chlorine gas, according to the UN and others. Yes, I mean it's happened, as you know, we've seen pictures of it. But who has done it? That you can't assume it was simply Syria because they had, you know, chemical weapons plans and whatnot. I mean, you could say that it was probably them, sure. But like I said, we don't. There's no evidence to say 100% one way or the other. Ugh, Amy Schumer. Ugh, that's fucking disturbing. Let's see here. This is from the New York Times. All of these articles are going to be linked in the description box if you want to check them out yourself. A barrage of missiles against Syria by American, French, and British forces most likely will not stop President Bashar al-Assad's chemical weapons program, a Pentagon assessment has concluded despite President Trump's mission accomplished declaration hours after last weekend strikes. Yes, this it reminds me so much about Operation Iraqi Freedom because we went in and we essentially booted out the original regime. We killed Osama bin Laden, quote unquote, crushed Al Qaeda, and set up a new governmental system, which it quickly fell apart the minute that we left. It's not learning from the past. The area is always going to be constantly at war, despite what we do. I mean, aside from the negative aspect of what it's going to cause in our relationship with Russia, it's also going to fuck over the amount. Every time that we focus on the Middle East, we always cause more issues for ourselves because it radicalizes more people, especially to the U.S. But it also causes a number of issues where people on the outside and in other Western countries just look at us as being warmongering, despite the fact that the British and the UK was involved with this as well. The U.S. is the figurehead, is the one that's going to be blamed for it. She does have gigantic tits, though. I'm assuming you're talking about Amy Schumer, which is just makes me fucking a weird feeling on my back. Military intelligence report put out less than 3 days after the attack said the Allied airstrikes likely set back Mr. Assad's production of sarin gas. Well, I mean, yeah, you attack this fucking chemical plants. Of course, it's going to put back his production of it. This does not mean he's going to fucking stop him. You can't tell me that he doesn't have some that are hidden from not even the West, probably Russia as well, their ally. But it found that the Syrian president is expected to continue researching and developing chemical weapons for potential use. According to an American intelligence analyst who has seen the document and described to the New York Times on the condition of anonymity. I'm not surprised. You're dealing with not even just a president, but you're dealing with an area that has throughout history has shown no remorse whatsoever about using weapons that are of questionable or tactics that are of questionable morality. These people, they don't care as long as they win. Anyway, moving on. They do retain a residual capability to produce chemical weapons, Lieutenant General Kenneth F. McKenzie Jr. That is a long-ass name. The Joint Staff Director said on Thursday of the Syrian government, he said the chemical weapons are spread through the country. Yes, and probably, like I said before, even have ones that are fucking hidden from us that we do not see, and probably not even Russia sees. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, even in the U.S., we probably have plenty of underground projects that the rest of the country doesn't even fucking know about. Let's see, they still have ability to conduct attacks. I would not rule that out. General McKenzie said, "Yes, I'm not." This is like military strategy 101. Is you never put all of your cards out on the table. You never show your hand. Do I need to make more euphemism, or should just go out and say it? The government probably has a number of underground projects that they're working on. I don't mean literally underground, I mean metaphorically underground, that not only the West doesn't know about, but Russia doesn't know about either. Simply for the sake that if in the future Assad ends up getting control of Syria and kicks the, essentially squashes the rebellion and ends up having an issue with Russia, they don't want all of their information to be known to Russia either. Anyway, planning for the strike of 105 missiles on 3 targets, chemical weapons storage in research facilities near Damascus and Homs, took nearly a full week. Staging and final preparations for the attack, which lasted roughly 2 minutes, took hours to carry out. Mr. Trump announced it on Friday night in Washington as the missiles were hitting Syria before dawn on Saturday. It takes us a full week to, organize a missile strike. Not only do we have to have, like the president, the prime minister, and of Britain and the prime minister of France all have to be on board, but they also have to coordinate where they're going to hit, when they're going to hit, how many missiles they're going to use, what kind of missiles they're going to use, and all that has to go through the proper channels. Now, with that being said, some of it's probably going to end up getting over to Syria that this is going to happen, and then so they have 7 days. By the time they get it, we'll hack it. We'll say they have 3 days or 4 days to respond ahead of time, preemptively react to getting missile strike. So what they do is they take all the chemicals out of and all the research that they need as much as they can. They remove as much as they can from the missile strike zone as they possibly can. "70 were shot down," Max France says. "I'm not surprised." So 35 missiles actually struck. Hours later, Mr. Trump said on Twitter that the Allied strikes to punish Mr. Assad for a suspected chemical weapons attack on April 7th could not have had a better result. Wisdom. "A perfectly executed strike last night. Thank you to France and the United Kingdom for their wisdom and the power of their fine military." From what I've heard about the military in the UK, you might not want to say that. Nikki R. Haley, the American ambassador to the United Nations, also told the Security Council on Saturday that the United States is confident that we have crippled Syria's chemical weapons program. So she was the one that was one of the ones that was specifically pushing for President Trump to get involved over there, the American ambassador to the United Nations. United Nations in and of itself has a lot of shifty things going on, but that's besides the point. But yeah, she was the one that was really pushing it. Other Trump administration officials were more circumspect. I haven't seen that word used very often. A senior administration official told reporters on Saturday that the Syrian government still possesses sarin, chlorine, and weapons able to carry chemicals that could be used for future attacks. Still, the official said the strike successfully helped reestablish a deterrent by proving that Mr. Trump was willing to take military action. This, I could see, yeah. Okay, I could see where you're coming from with that. You got to also remember, we're also getting we're sticking our nose where it doesn't belong, because we are not. Like I said, we're not the police of the world. It's not our job, despite the fact that most of the U.S. military is used to defend foreign interests. That aside, it's not our job. And the more that we continue to do this, the more we're going to establish ourselves as being the fucking police force of the world. It's not, and also, it's essentially breaking down and dissolving the good relationship we have with Putin, that Trump had with Putin. So if you're a fan of the U.S. and Russia not getting along, you might as well take a top of a fucking DeLorean and take a trip back to the 1980s. Albeit, supposedly both of us have severely reduced the amount of nuclear technology that we have, nuclear weapons that we have. Doesn't mean that we don't have a lot of them. Let's see, your opinions hurt. Niece is coming back. I gotta go. Have a good stream and don't be gay. I can't do that. Sorry. Yeah, this is that's a beautiful fucking picture right there. Lieutenant General Kenneth F. McKenzie Jr., the Joint Staff Director with Dana W. White, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs. They still have the ability to conduct attacks. Yeah, they said that earlier. Wait. Her name is Dana W. White? That's funny. Mr. Assad's government has denied using chemical weapons in the town of Douma outside Damascus, where more than 40 people were killed, and blamed Syrian rebels for staging the April 7th attack. See, despite all of our issues with them, we at least have to take it into account, because just because a person's an asshole doesn't mean that they're lying. It's just one of those things we have in our own public system, our own public court system, but we don't apply it to our fucking politics. We don't apply it to military action. It's an idiotic situation to even get involved in the first place. but we did it anyway. In the end, last weekend's operation was a textbook example of how the military can carry out a precision strike seemingly without incident, despite potential complication. It is unclear if all missiles hit their intended targets. Max in the chat said earlier that I think he said that 70 of them were shot down. So if he is true, I don't know how it's unclear, but this is the New York Times, so grain of salt. Russian state news media said on Thursday that Syria found 2 unexploded cruise missiles after the strikes and has handed them over to Russian officials. Yeah. Russia's already well aware of who spearheaded the attack, so for what purpose they want the cruise missiles, I don't know, but it just doesn't bode well. The missiles alone cost at least $100 million in an attack that was nearly twice as large as a similar strike last year, and that assault missiles from 2 American warships targeted a Syrian airfield where officials said Mr. Assad's forces had launched warplanes that dropped sarin gas on the rebel-held town of Khan. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Killing more than 80 people and sickening hundreds more. Now, $100 million. That's fucking great. And keep in mind, this isn't even towards U.S. military interest. Like, we're only doing this because Assad is a bad man. Is essentially what it boils down to, which is fucking dumb. But that's besides the point. American, British, and French aircraft and ships fired cruise missiles from the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and the Persian Gulf. Dozens of refueling, reconnaissance, escort, and jamming aircraft were airborne. Some of them primarily focus on monitoring and scrambling communications to stymie any Russian and Syrian counterattack, whether with surface-to-air missiles or warplanes, according to American military officials. This is a fucking precursor right there to like flat-out war. I get it. It was just a missile strike to one particular section of Syria, but Russia is in good terms with Assad to the point that they're allies, and we essentially left a pile of dog shit on the front doorstep, and we're just hoping Putin doesn't have a bad reaction to it. April 7th, suspected chemical attack. This is an interesting diagram. Now, we have a series of, not a series, but we have a general issue in the United States where you have a group of people that are very anti-war, which I guess you can consider me one of them. But this just proves how much of our own military is outside of the interests of the United States. This is on the other side of the fucking globe, basically. And we have submarines, warships, and bombers and foreign fucking not embezzled, but sticking essentially waiting in the pool of foreign affairs. Senior United States officers were not sure how Russia would respond to the airstrikes, despite a frequently used hotline between the two countries to de-conflict and coordinate continuing military operations in Syria. Last Thursday, intelligence officers from every American military regional command held a video conference regarding the potential Russian blowback once the missiles were launched, military officials said. Yeah, I'm surprised that they haven't done anything. And it's only been, what, a week, 2 weeks since this happened? It's been 2 weeks, yeah. This happened on the 7th. So, to me, it just seems like such a fucking terrible idea. We're living on a hope and a prayer that Russia doesn't respond negatively to this. As the American military planned the strikes, the White House and the Pentagon weighed several different Syrian installations and bases that might be targeted. When it came to time to attack, most of the operation was executed and overseen by the American Naval Base, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, where the 5th Fleet is based in the Air Command Center at Al Udeid, Air Base in Qatar. There, dozens of American and Allied planners huddled in front of banks of computers, maps, and giant video screens to manage the flow of aircraft and missiles participating from the United States, Britain, and France. So, I'm no Alex Jones, and I'm not here to tell you that they're putting shit in the water that's turning the freaking frogs gay. But I do have an issue with the United States having all of this weight in foreign affairs, because the more of our military that is dedicated to dealing with things that are not relatively directly related to the United States, less of our military that is going to be available to use to defend something that is directly related to the United States, which is not a good thing. The number of warplanes involved also created some diplomatic sensitivity with other countries in the Middle East. Oh, here we go. This ought to be good. One senior American officer involved in the strike planning said Saudi Arabia and Jordan were put in the delicate position of allowing American-led fighters and bombers to use sovereign airspace, so long as it was not publicly advertised. So it was not publicly advertised, but you're talking about it right here, and somehow the people aren't supposed to be able to get their hands on this at some point in those countries. They led strikes through fucking sovereign airspace to do an airstrike because of a chemical attack that we can't prove that Assad actually fucking did. Brilliant. Bloody fucking brilliant. With those countries' permission, the United States flew B-1 bombers from Qatar along with one electronic warfare jet and refueling aircraft. Pentagon officials said bombers likely launched cruise missiles from Jordanian territory. The missiles, carrying 1,000-pound warheads, were capable of hitting narrow targets from hundreds of miles away. Officials later said they were not aware of any civilian casualties caused by the missiles. We're not aware of it yet. And if there are civilian casualties, what separates us from Assad at this point? Assuming that Assad actually did the chemical attack. Oh, we did it. We did it because we're better because we did it in retaliation of something that he did that was bad. No, there's no justification for that. Living on a prayer. A variety of cruise missiles were used in the strikes to distance Allied ships, aircraft, and one American submarine from a potential counterattack, though some of the fighter jets may have been within range of some of the enemy's more advanced surface-to-air missiles upgraded in the past 3 years by the Russian military. Their pilots, if shot down, would have been able to parachute into largely friendly territory or waters heavily patrolled by friendly vessels. So we're taking our equipment, and not only our equipment, but also brothers and sisters in arms, and we're having them enter into a place where they can get shot down for the sake of moral brevity. Brilliant. Fucking brilliant. Now this goes on this. I'm on a little tangent. I used to make fun of, I still do actually make fun of, like, New York Times and the Washington Post, mainstream media, for giving Trump shit about stupid shit, like how he ate his steak or how many scoops of ice cream he got. And I always said, there are actually legitimate things to criticize him for, but you're not doing. This is one of those things that you could legitimately criticize him for. Are they going to do it? Doesn't seem like it. Oh, but that's because they like this narrative. I wonder how this fits in with the my Russia narrative, though. The military intelligence report indicated that, the Barza Research and Development Center, hiccups, in Damascus was destroyed. According to the analysts, most of the missiles were aimed at the Barza facility, where the Western allies believe that Assad government was rebuilding its chemical weapons program. It's been closely monitored since the Organization for the Public Prohibition of Chemical Weapons found precursors for nerve agents there in 2014. So a lot of this is very interesting wording. So intelligence report indicated that the research center was destroyed, according to the analyst. So this doesn't seem to be 100% proven. Most of the missiles were aimed at the Barza facility. So what other targets were there? Where Western allies believed the Assad government was rebuilding its chemical weapons program. You believe that, unless, he just wanted you to think that and he's rebuilding them somewhere else. And see, this is an issue. This is part of the issue when it comes to the military strategies, because you assume things like this off of, there's obviously evidence that you use, certain things point to it, but you don't know how much of that is you being led along by the person that knows full well that you're researching. Now, in 2014, Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons found precursors for agents there in 2014. That was 4 years. You mean to tell me that Assad wasn't like, remember that one time they came in here and researching this 4 years ago? I might want to move that research center. I don't know. It seems fishy to me. Max France says, doesn't matter whether Assad did anything or not. Syria is our ally and poses no threat to us. He could glass his own country for all I care, not our place to dictate what other nations do. I can't argue with you on that one. Me personally, all I see this leading to is absolutely nothing. They still have chemical facilities. They still have the ability to conduct chemical attacks. If it was them, the only thing that this does is us flex our muscles a little bit, and it doesn't do anything. Because Assad already knew full well that the U.S. was going to get involved anyway. There's no reason to believe that we wouldn't. The other two, there's only a matter of time in that. And I'm not saying that we should, because we shouldn't. It's not our fucking problem. The other two sites, the Hemshinshar chemical weapons bunker and the storage facility in Homs, however you pronounce that, were severely damaged, but the analyst said the report cited surveillance assets that watched a 5-ton truck leave one of those sites the day before it was struck with a tarp-covered load that couldn't have included equipment or chemical weapons. Yeah, remember what I said before about they had time. They knew they could have moved as much information and research as they wanted out of there, and you only saw the one truck. That's not to say that there weren't more. The fucking guy's holding a big old metal rod. Look at that thing, huh? Military experts voiced skepticism, that word, that the airstrikes severely hobbled Mr. Assad's chemical weapons program. Claims that the attack set back years depend in part on what was inside Barza at the time of the strikes. See, this is the issue when you make assumptions like this. They have not gone and they have not looked into what was actually at that site when it was hit. They don't know what was there. For all you know, it could have been filled full of fucking unicorns and puppy dogs. You're just assuming that it really hobbled his Assad's program. You have no real evidence to support that claim. You're just assuming. Yeah, we blew up his main base, so therefore he must have it must have set him back a while. We don't know how much information they took out of there before we bombed it. We don't even know what was actually in there when we bombed it. But we're gonna assume. Yeah. Keep working off those assumptions. See how far that gets you in life. That might be true if Bars was filled with difficult to replace equipment or if crucial personnel were killed in the airstrike, he said. But what we see is just a building. Are we certain all the important bits were above ground and destroyed in the airstrike? No, you can't make that assumption. For all you know, it could be buried in a fucking bunker 5 feet from where you bombed. And all you did was rattle their heads a little bit. In November, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons inspected Bars and collected samples for testing and concluded the last month that inspectors did not observe any activities inconsistent with Syria's obligations under the Chemical Weapons Convention. So this was in November, assuming in 2017. They inspected and collected samples for testing and did not observe any activities that were inconsistent with Syria's obligations under the Chemical Weapons Convention. So they all of a sudden, 6 months change. They got that after half a year. They decided, we're going to start upping our production, or we're going to change the chemicals and somehow that breaks it. But like, a lot of this doesn't fucking add up. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis said chlorine gas was among the weapons used in the April 7th suspected attack on Douma. Suspected attack outside Damascus, but he provided little evidence, nor any that the 3 targets contained chemical agents banned by 2013 agreement between Russia and the United States to eliminate Syria's chemical weapons program. There's no evidence for this. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Why would you risk a war with Russia over what essentially accounts to an assumption? I don't know. It seems fishy to me. It seems like something somebody with no understanding of military tactics would do. And Mattis is a defense secretary. He has to have at least some experience in the military, right? You would assume. Chlorine, which is commonly used in industrial products, was not outlined as part of the 2013 agreement. Yes, because people use chlorine even in hell. It's even in pools. However, it is described by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons as a chlorine choking agent. It's prohibited when used as a weapon. Syria is believed to have used it in several chemical attacks since 2013. So it's been 5 years, and we have no way of guaranteeing that Syria had actually done it. We just say it's believed. What are we basing this off of? What the rebels said? Because, they don't have a bias at all. The organization's inspectors have sought to gain access to Duma to collect evidence of chemical agents, but were forced to turn back after coming under gunfire this week. Russian state news media reported that the Russian military found a rebel chemical lab in the same area. Yeah, I mean, the Russian state probably has news media probably has a little bit of bias towards the Russian narrative, but you still got to take it somewhat seriously. Mr. Mattis on Wednesday blamed the Syrian government for the holdup, and on Thursday, the State Department accused Russia of helping Mr. Assad's government sanitize Duma of evidence of a chemical attack. Yeah, you're accusing. You don't have any information. Nobody was even there yet. No evidence had been compiled. There was no way of guaranteeing that actually happened. At the United Nations, Russia maintained that the April 7th attack was a hoax fabricated by Mr. Assad's enemies. It distributed a nearly 4-minute video that featured an interview with a young boy from Duma who it said was made to appear falsely as a victim of a chemical weapons attack in a stage hospital emergency scene. Once again, you could, yes, the situation has a little bit of a bias for the Russian narrative, but it still has to be taken fucking seriously. Especially, it's not like doing this. It's not like you're just reporting a false narrative and it doesn't really affect anything. Actually, you're going in and this event might actually cause a fucking war with Russia. But proper research, proper detective work, nah, we don't need that. And here's this article right here is pretty fucking funny. I mean, aside from the fact that UN welcomed the United Nations, it's your world at the top up here. Keep in mind, this is from the UN, so this is biased towards the UN side of it. And they said, following 3 draft texts on chemical weapons attack in Syria, the Security Council fails to agree upon independent investigative mechanism. Security Council voting today on 3 separate draft resolutions in response to recent allegations of a chemical weapons attack in the Syrian town of Duma failed to rally the votes needed to launch an independent mechanism of investigation into the incident as delegates voiced frustration over the continued paralysis and expanding risk between nations. Now, I'm not going to go through this whole thing because this one's relatively long, but like I said, the link will be in the description if you want to read the whole thing. But I'm just going to go over the first 2 paragraphs that I found those to be the most interesting. Anyway, by the terms of a draft resolution submitted by the United States, which was not adopted following a vote of 12 in favor to 2 against Bolivia, Russian Federation, with 1 abstention, China, owing to a vote by the Russian Federation, the Council would have established a United Nations independent mechanism for an initial period of 1 year. It would have requested the Secretary General to make recommendations about the mechanism, including its terms of reference, based on the principles of impartiality, independence, and professionalism to identify those responsible for the use of chemical weapons in Syria. Yes. So, 12 in favor. The 2 against for Bolivia and the Russian Federation, obviously. An investigation into a Russian ally. And then you have China, which basically, I don't care. But the issue is that even if you do have somebody that say, yeah, I'm going to be impartial, everybody has their bias. So sending in somebody from the UN, they're going to have biases. It's just the way that it is. Oh, this one was from The Guardian. Inspectors from the International Chemical Weapons Watchdog are to start an investigation into an attack on a town outside Damascus that killed more than 40 people, injured up to 500, and led to the threat of military strikes against Syrian government targets. Actually, that already happened. This is Friday. This is for Friday the 13th of April. So, the team from the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons will begin work on Saturday to determine whether chemical weapons were used in Duma on the 7th of April. The town had been the last opposition stronghold in the Syrian capital. It was recaptured in the days following the attack, which has drawn broad condemnation by the U.S., France, and the U.K., the three that were involved in the bombing, but strengthened enough from Russia that it actually took place. Well, at this point, Russia admits that it took place. They just think that the rebels did it as a false flag operation to get the U.S. and U.S. and by extension the other members of the United Nations involved, which it did. It did get us involved. So whether or not it was a false flag still remains to be seen. There's no evidence saying one way or the other. The World Health Organization said on Wednesday that close to 500 people sought treatment at medical facilities it supports. Many had symptoms inconsistent with exposure to toxic chemicals, notably chlorine gas and a nerve agent. Russian military officials who visited the site said no patients had complained of such symptoms. So we got the Russian military saying nobody there's had the symptoms, and we have the World Health Organization saying close to 500 people had symptoms. So nations can't even agree. With the war of narratives raging in the aftermath of the attack, attention is focusing on the science surrounding what took place. The investigation will focus on gathering samples from the people affected and the immediate surroundings. The inspectors will also interview doctors, patients, and other witnesses. So, as Max said before, despite whether or not Assad did it, it's not our place to get fucking involved. The shell country's going to do what shell country's doing. Even if we did end up kicking Assad out and establishing a government, like I said before, it's only going to fall apart the minute that we leave anyway. It might fall apart even while we're there. And it's going to create more tension between whatever government happens to be left in the U.S. So about that Zyklon B. Chlorine is fine. I put 2 scoops in my coffee every morning. I prefer it. My bleach, thank you. Establishing whether chlorine was used will be harder than identifying any nerve agent. Blood and urine samples rarely retain any useful signatures from a chlorine attack, and it will be extremely challenging to find telltale signs in the environment. The gas will have gone, leaving chloride behind, but there is so much chloride in the environment already that confirming any was produced in a gas attack is not easy. Instead, inspectors will look for a compound in the environment that only tends to form in the presence of chlorine gas. Details of the chemical signature are secret, chemical weapons specialist said, because the forensic procedure has not yet been published. Yeah, and this is, of course it hasn't. That's like giving up information about a case when you're working on homicide. You don't reveal what you know. Greater attention will be devoted to whether a nerve agent such as sarin was deployed. There have been 2 previous confirmed examples of large-scale sarin used in the Syrian conflict. In both cases, the OPCW found that the sarin used against opposition targets came from regime-held stockpiles. Horrifying images showed large numbers of dead and dying people in Ghouta, 2013, and Khan, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, in April last year. See, the thing is, this is an appeal to emotion, much like with the firearms debate, people talking about, oh, think of the children. It's used typically to get most people on board that normally wouldn't be on board because they, majority of people think that people dying of a gas attack is a horrific fucking thing. However, you also have people like me that just, I view it as not our fucking problem. So, whether or not Syria's government actually did it, considering it came from regime-held stockpiles, well, that really is about the only thing you have to say that it did. If a nerve agent was used, evidence should not be hard to find, experts say. One starting point could be the basement of the house where many of those killed or injured were sheltering. That would be the best place to start, one expert told The Guardian. Enclosed space traps the gas, and some will be absorbed onto different types of material. Russian military teams inspected the house and declared nothing had happened there, raising concerns among the families of the dead that the scene had been tampered with. However, the experts said specimens gathered from materials, including window seals, may retain traces of any nerve agent used, even after a cleanup attempt. Once again, keep in mind that this was written before the attack had happened, before we had done our missile strike. So it's, like I said before, it's like going in on an assumption. It's never a good thing. It's very hard to clean a place so well that you cannot find it. You always find something. No, yeah, I'm not surprised. If no sarin is found, a reliable smoking gun for the agent is the compound isopropyl methylphosphonic acid. But it can be hard to find after about a week. It leaves behind another compound, methylphosphonic acid. But this is also a residue from other agents, including VSX and so on. I don't know what those 2 things are. Inspectors will also gather blood and urine from those apparently affected by the attack. When sarin enters the blood, it binds the proteins to form protein adducts, which can be detected more than a month after exposure. The U.S. government said on Thursday it received urine specimens from Doma, which contained the presence of a nerve agent. And you see, so the attack happened, but we don't know who did it. We're going to assume it was Assad, and we're going to base everything that we do militaristically off of that. That's fucking bloody brilliant. With their work facing intense scrutiny, the team must confirm that people who claim to be victims were at the site at the time of the alleged attack and oversee directly the collection of samples, along with others from the environment. These samples will be flown with a courier to the OPCW lab in the Hog. That's just a very interesting name. From there, the samples will be split and sent to OPCW-affiliated labs around the world for analysis. Last year, chemical weapons inspectors released a report that used signature impurities to trace the trail of sarin used in an April attack in Khan. Once again, I'm not going to try to pronounce that. Back to the stockpiles held by the Syrian regime in Douma. The inspectors have no mandate to trace the origins of any chemical attacks to their source. So they're not trying to figure out where they came from. They're just trying to figure out what kind of chemical was used and if the chemical attack had happened in the first place. Like it says here, they have no mandate to trace the origins of any chemical weapons to their source. That's fucking great. Oh, this is... It's just depressing me. It just reminds me a lot of Operation Iraqi Freedom. That took place after the Twin Towers got struck. 9/11, that whole fucking thing. That was 17 years ago. And ever since then, the United States has never been in a time of peace. So we've been at war. We've been at war for fucking 17 years. All because we want to get involved in the Middle East. That seems fucking brilliant to me. It's a great idea. Because the last time that we did that, it ended so well, and for not only the U.S. but for everybody that was involved too. When a country breaks down and they blame the individual, they blame us because we left and left them, as they say it, high and fucking, well, not as they say it, but as they speculate it, high and dry. So with that said, we're not the police of the world. It's not our job to go in and try to fix everybody else's fucking problems. I mean, we have our own problems in our own country that we have to fucking fix, and we don't even have an even remotely good grasp on. The debt, immigration, homelessness, male suicide, fucking the gun control debate is still going on as we speak. But all of these issues, and people want to add, getting involved in the Middle East again on top of it. What, do we not learn from the past? Do we not, understand that getting involved in the Middle East never works out? You can't take the Middle East, most countries in the Middle East that are unstable, stabilize them with a foreign power, have that foreign power, essentially put in a form of government and then leave. It doesn't work. These people in the Middle East and that are in those countries, a lot of the time, do not live under what we consider to be Western values. Do not know how to deal with Western values. It's a foreign country. It's a foreign world, even. I mean, the Middle East is a desert. So, I don't know. It's all fine and dandy and a perfect unicorn and rainbow world to think that Assad is a bad man. We need to go and take care of the bad man, establish a new form of government, and that government's going to fucking last. Because it won't. It won't. The only thing, and I'm not saying that Assad is fucking innocent, but as Max Trent said before, it's not our fucking job. It's not our issue. It's not the Middle East problem is the Middle East problem. It's not for us to go in there and try to be the police state of the fucking world. And with that, the United Nations relies heavily on the U.S.'s military, because the U.S. military is still, I believe, one of the strongest in the fucking world. But that's only because our military is so large. Aside from the fact that the United States in itself, in of itself, is large, but because we're the ones that get called when shit like this comes up. The United Nations calls in the U.S. all the fucking time. So I think as a fucking citizen of the U.S., we need to kind of like break ties with that, so to speak. You know, deal with your fucking shit and we'll deal with ours. But what do I know? I'm just an idiot on the internet. Anyway, with that said, I am done bringing you the doomsday narrative. World War III might happen. Fucking knows. So for those people that are all gung ho about this, if you're a Trump supporter and you're still supporting him after this, you have blind faith, and that's never a good thing. If you're a liberal and you support him, you're not really a liberal. Stop. You're just as bad as the Republicans were during the fucking Bush times. Now, it's just something, like I said before, if you're looking for something to actually criticize him about, this is one of those things that you very much could criticize him for. Because either the wall is not getting built right now, the immigration is still just as fucked up as it used to be. There are millions of other things that the most powerful man in the world could be doing. And instead, he's picking a fight with the other big kid on the playground. It's not going to end well. Am I saying it's going to lead to World War III? Who knows? But all of the goodwill that had been built up between Trump and Putin right now is going to have to come into question. The only thing I find extremely hilarious about it is how are they going to continue the Russian narrative now? It's going to be very difficult to do considering Putin and Trump aren't exactly on speaking terms right now. But anyway, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, and or night. I'll see you cunts in the next one.